At the center of all existence stands Yggdrasil, the world tree. It is an ash tree of such immense size that its branches stretch over all the worlds and its roots delve into the deepest wells of existence. Yggdrasil is not merely a tree. It is the axis upon which all reality turns, the connection between all things, the living embodiment of the cosmos itself. The name Yggdrasil means Odin's horse, or the terrible one's horse, referring to the time Odin hung himself from its branches for 9 days and nights to gain knowledge of the runes. In this sense, the tree became his steed, carrying him on a journey not through space but through the realms of knowledge and death, to the very edge of existence and back again. Yggdrasil supports 9 realms, arranged in 3 levels along its massive trunk and branches. At the top are Asgard, home of the Aesir gods, and Vanaheim, home of the Vanir gods, along with Alfheim, realm of the Light Elves. In the middle level sits Midgard, the world of humans, along with Jotunheim, land of the giants, Svartalfheim, home of the dwarves and Nidavellir, another realm of the dark elves and skilled craftsmen. At the lowest level are Niflheim, the realm of ice and mist, and Muspelheim, the realm of fire. Some sources also place Helheim, the realm of the dead, at this lowest level. The tree itself is constantly under threat, constantly being damaged, and yet it endures. This mirrors the Norse understanding of the cosmos, that existence itself is fragile, always under siege, requiring constant maintenance and care to survive. Yggdrasil trembles and groans, but it continues to stand, holding the 9 realms in place through all the ages. 3 roots support Yggdrasil, each reaching to a different realm and drawing sustenance from a different well. The first root extends to Asgard, where it draws from the well of Urd. Here sit the 3 Norns, Ur, Verdandi, and Skuld, who are the fates of all beings. Each day, these ancient beings draw water from the well and mix it with the white clay from around the well, creating a sacred mud that they spread upon the root to keep it healthy. Without their daily ministrations, this root would decay, and with it, the connection between fate and the divine would be severed. The second root reaches to Jotunheim, to the well of Mimir. This well contains the waters of wisdom and knowledge, and it was here that Odin sacrificed his eye to drink from its depths. Mimir, the wise being who guards this well, was once a living god or giant, but after the war between the Aesir and Vanir, he was killed and his head preserved by Odin's magic. Now Mimir's head sits beside the well, still speaking wisdom to those who seek it, still guarding the deep knowledge that lies within those waters. The third root extends down into Niflheim, into the freezing mist and ice of that primordial realm. There it reaches Regelmer, the roaring cauldron, a spring from which flow numerous rivers. But this root is under constant attack, for dwelling of Regelmer is Nidhogg, a terrible dragon who gnaws perpetually at the root, trying to sever it and bring down the world tree. Nidhogg represents entropy, decay, and the destructive forces that seek to unmake creation. He will gnaw at that root until Ragnarok comes, and perhaps his patient work contributes to the final collapse of the tree when the end times arrive. Living within and upon Yggdrasil are many creatures, each playing their part in the ecosystem of the world tree. At the very top of the tree sits an eagle, a wise and ancient bird who surveys all the realms from his high perch. Between his eyes sits a hawk named Vedrfolnir, whose sharp gaze misses nothing. The eagle represents the highest perspective, the ability to see the grand patterns of existence from above. At the base of the tree, as we have mentioned, coils Nidhogg the dragon. Between these 2 extremes, the eagle at the crown and the dragon at the root, runs a squirrel named Ratatosk. This creature scurries up and down the trunk of Yggdrasil, carrying insults and messages between the eagle and the dragon, stirring up enmity between them. Ratatosk represents communication, but also the mischief and misunderstanding that communication can bring. He ensures that the eagle and Nidhogg remain enemies, that their conflict continues, that the tension between the heights and the depths never resolves. For stags also live among the branches of Yggdrasil, Dane, Dvalin, Dunir, and Durathr. These deer leap among the branches, eating the buds and leaves of the tree, causing damage that Yggdrasil must constantly heal from. They represent the natural process of consumption and renewal, the way that life feeds upon life, the necessary cycle of damage and healing that keeps existence dynamic rather than static. The trunk of Yggdrasil weeps with dew, a sweet liquid that collects on its bark. This dew falls down to Midgard, where it is called honeydew, and bees gather to make their honey. In this way, the world tree provides sustenance even to the smallest creatures, and its essence makes its way into the food that humans eat. Everything is connected to Yggdrasil, drawing life from it in one way or another. But Yggdrasil is not indestructible. As we have mentioned, Nidhogg gnaws at its root. The stags eat its leaves and bark. There is also mention of rot and decay affecting the tree, the natural processes of aging and deterioration that affect even the most mighty of living things. The Norns combat this decay with their daily applications of water and clay, but they cannot prevent it entirely. They can only slow it, maintain it, preserve it for as long as possible. This constant state of being under siege, of requiring maintenance and care, reflects the Norse worldview profoundly. The cosmos is not a perfect, unchanging creation that runs on its own. It is a living thing that requires effort to maintain, that is always threatened by forces of chaos and destruction, that endures only because there are beings willing to do the work of preservation. The Norns tend the root. The gods defend the realms. The tree itself strains and groans but continues to stand. This is the nature of existence, not permanence, but persistence in the face of constant threat. When Odin hung himself from Yggdrasil's branches, wounded by his own spear, refusing all help for 9 days and nights, he was not just seeking the runes. He was experiencing the tree in a profound way, becoming one with it, understanding its nature through direct suffering. He hung on that windy tree, as the poem says, swaying the void, neither fully alive nor fully dead, existing in the liminal space between worlds. And in that space he glimpsed the runes, those symbols of power that underlie reality itself, and grasped them at the moment of his greatest extremity. This suggests that Yggdrasil is not just a physical tree, but a metaphysical principle. It represents the structure of reality, the connections between all things, the underlying pattern that gives form to chaos. To hang upon Yggdrasil is to experience existence in its rawest form, to understand the framework upon which the 9 realms are built. The tree also serves as a pathway between the worlds. The gods can travel along its branches or roots to reach different realms. Odin's 8-legged horse Sleipnir can gallop along these pathways. The rainbow bridge Bifrost, which connects Asgard to Midgard, might itself be a visible manifestation of one of Yggdrasil's branches, a way for divine power to reach down into the human world. At Ragnarok, Yggdrasil will tremble and groan as it has never done before. The earthquakes that herald the end times are said to be the shaking of the world tree itself. Nidhogg will finally chew through the root he has been gnawing for ages. The tree will catch fire as Surtur spreads flames across the realms. And yet, even in the midst of this destruction, Yggdrasil will not entirely perish. Its roots will continue to writhe, suggesting that even after the end of this cosmic cycle, the tree's essence will remain, ready to support the new world that will rise from the ashes. When the earth emerges green and fertile from the sea after Ragnarok's fires have cooled, Yggdrasil will stand again, or perhaps it will be a new world tree, grown from a seed of the old one. Life will return to perch in its branches, new roots will dig into new wells, and the cycle will begin again. The world tree is eternal not because it is indestructible, but because it is perpetually renewed, because the principle it represents, the interconnection of all things, the structure that holds reality together, cannot be permanently destroyed. There is a deep wisdom in the image of Yggdrasil. It teaches us that everything is connected, that the actions of God affect mortals, and the actions of mortals ripple up to the gods. It shows us that existence requires maintenance, that decay is natural but can be combated through dedicated effort. It reveals that knowledge comes at a price, that to understand the deepest mysteries, one must be willing to sacrifice, to suffer, to journey to the edge of death itself. The world tree stands as a testament to endurance. Gnawed by dragons, browsed by deer, bearing the weight of 9 worlds, threatened constantly by forces of destruction, and yet it stands. It bends but does not break. It is damaged but continues to grow. It faces its doom at Ragnarok, but will somehow persist beyond even that final catastrophe. In this way, Yggdrasil is the ultimate symbol of life itself, vulnerable, endangered, requiring constant care, and yet capable of enduring, of adapting, of surviving even the worst that chaos can inflict upon it. As we prepare to journey through each of the 9 realms that hang upon this mighty tree, we carry with us the understanding that they are not separate, isolated worlds, but interconnected parts of a greater whole. What happens in Asgard affects Midgard. The actions of giants in Jotunheim ripple across all the realms. The fires of Muspelheim and the ice of Niflheim, which created the cosmos at the beginning, will unmake it at the end. All is connected through Yggdrasil. All is held together by the world tree, and all will ultimately share the same fate when the time comes. But that time is not yet. For now, Yggdrasil stands, its branches reaching toward the heavens, its roots delving into the depths of mystery, its trunk connecting all the levels of existence. The Norns tend its roots. The eagle surveys from its crown. Ratatosk carries his messages. Nidhogg gnaws. The stags browse. And the 9 worlds continue their existence, held in place by the greatest tree that ever was or ever will be. High above all other realms, perched among the highest branches of Yggdrasil, lies Asgard, the realm of the Aesir gods. It is a place of golden halls and shining towers, of feasting and valor, of wisdom and power. To look upon Asgard is to see the pinnacle of divine civilization, the ordered world at its most glorious and refined. Asgard is encircled by a great wall, built to protect the gods from the giants and other threats. The story of this wall's construction is one of cunning and danger, involving Loki's trickery and the birth of Sleipnir. But the wall itself stands as a testament to the gods' need for protection. Even in their high realm, even with all their power, the gods understood that they were not invincible, that threats existed beyond their walls, and that vigilance was necessary. The most prominent structure in Asgard is Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain, Odin's great mead hall where the Einarjar, the honored dead, feast and fight in preparation for Ragnarok. Valhalla is enormous, with 540 doors, each wide enough for 800 warriors to march through side by side. Its rafters are made of spears. Its roof is thatched with shields, and mail coats are strewn across the benches. It is a hall built for warriors, decorated with the implements of war, celebrating the martial virtues that the Norse held in such high regard. Each morning, the Einarjar wake and arm themselves for battle. They march out to the fields and fight each other with all their skill and strength. Those who fall are resurrected when the dinner horn sounds, and all return to hall to feast together, their wounds healed, their energy restored. They eat the flesh of Saramnir, a boar that is cooked each day and returned to life each night, providing an endless supply of meat. They drink mead that flows from the udders of the goat Aaron, who stands atop Valhalla, eating the leaves of Rar, a tree that grows there. In this way, the Einarjar train constantly for the final battle, building their skills and camaraderie, preparing for the day when they will march out to face the giants and monsters at Ragnarok. But Valhalla is not the only hall in Asgard. Each god has their own dwelling, each suited to their nature and purpose. Odin himself resides in Valsjaf, a hall he built and roofed with silver. Within this hall sits Hlidskjalf, the high seat from which Odin can see into all the 9 realms. When he sits there, nothing escapes his gaze. He sees the actions of gods and giants, the struggles of humans, the movements of all creatures across all worlds. This is how Odin maintains his knowledge and his awareness, by watching constantly, by observing everything, by missing nothing. Freya dwells in Sessrumnir, her hall located in the field of Folkvangr. Half of those who die in battle come to her rather than to Odin's Valhalla, and she welcomes them with no less honor. Her hall is said to be beautiful and spacious, a place of both martial honor and gentler pleasures, reflecting Freya's dual nature as goddess of both war and love. Thor lives in Bilskirnir, the largest building in all of Asgard, a hall with 540 rooms. This suits Thor's generous nature. He needs space for the many guests who seek his protection and hospitality. Thor's a defender of both Asgard and Midgard, and his hall reflects his role as the accessible god, the one whom mortals can approach more easily than the distant All-Father. Baldur's hall was called Breidablik, and it was said that nothing impure could exist within it. The hall matched its owner's nature, beautiful, bright, and perfect. After Baldur's death, the hall stood empty, a reminder of what had been lost, though the prophecy promises that when Baldur returns after Ragnarok, he will dwell there once again. Heimdall keeps his dwelling at Himinjorg, the hall that stands at the edge of heaven where Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, touches Asgard. From this position, Heimdall maintains his eternal watch, guarding the entrance to the realm of the gods. No one can enter Asgard without passing by Heimdall, and with his extraordinary senses, nothing escapes his notice. He sits there through day and night, requiring less sleep than a bird, listening and watching for any threat to the gods. The Rainbow Bridge Bifrost itself is one of the wonders of Asgard. It stretches from the realm of the gods down to Midgard, allowing the gods to travel easily to the world of mortals. The bridge is beautiful, shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow, but it is also strong, capable of bearing the weight of Thor and all his gear when he rides across it. However, Thor usually prefers to wade through rivers rather than use Bifrost, perhaps because his weight and the heat of his divine power might damage the delicate bridge. Bifrost is not merely a convenience, but a symbol of the connection between gods and mortals, between the divine realm and the human world. The gods did not remain isolated in their high realm, but involved themselves in the affairs of Midgard, traveling down the Rainbow Bridge to interact with humans, to father children, to fight giants, to shape events in the mortal world. This accessibility sets the Norse gods apart from more distant, transcendent deities. They are powerful but not remote, divine but not divorced from the concerns of mortals. At the center of Asgard stands a great ash tree, sometimes identified with Yggdrasil itself, though other sources suggest it is a separate tree that mirrors the world tree. Beneath this tree, or near it, the gods hold their court, their assembly called a thing, where they debate matters of importance and pass judgment on disputes. This reflects the Norse social structure, where free men would gather their own things to settle legal matters and make communal decisions. Even the gods govern themselves through council and debate rather than through the absolute decree of a single ruler. Ientenzr Grove somewhere in Asgard, the place where precious apple trees grow. These trees produce the golden apples that keep the gods young and vital, and Ion guards them carefully, distributing them as needed to maintain the gods' immortality. Without her grove and her apples, the gods would age like mortals, and Asgard would become a realm of the elderly and dying rather than the eternally youthful and strong. There is also mention of Glacier, a grove or forest in Asgard with the trees of leaves of red gold. This beautiful place stands as a testament to the divine nature of Asgard. Even its vegetation surpasses anything found in mortal realms. The red gold leaves never wither or fall, remaining eternally beautiful, catching the light and creating an atmosphere of perpetual autumn glory. The forges of Asgard are also worth mentioning, for this is where many of the gods' greatest treasures were made or received. While the dwarves in their underground halls actually crafted items like Mjolnir and Gungnir, these weapons were brought to Asgard and presented to the gods. The Aesir understand the value of craft and artisanship, even if they must rely on others to provide the finest work. This shows a wisdom in the gods. They do not pretend to be masters of every skill, but instead honor expertise wherever they find it. Life in Asgard is not all preparation for war and solemn duty. The gods feast often, enjoying great banquets where they drink mead and ale, eat sumptuous food, and listen to Bragi's poetry and songs. They play games. There are mentions of golden gaming pieces that the gods owned, which they would find again in the grass after Ragnarok, suggesting that play and leisure were important parts of divine life. The gods love, quarrel, reconcile, and engage in all the emotional dramas that make existence rich and meaningful. Yet there is always an undercurrent of awareness in Asgard, a knowledge that this golden realm and its pleasures are not eternal. Odin knows the prophecies. He has seen the future in his visions and his consultations with Mimir's head. He knows that Ragnarok is coming, that Asgard will burn, that the gods will fall. This knowledge haunts him, drives his constant quest for more wisdom, motivates his gathering of the Einarjar. The other gods know it too, to varying degrees. Baldur's death was a stark reminder that even in Asgard, even among the immortal gods, loss and tragedy can strike. This awareness adds a poignant quality to life in Asgard. The gods feast and celebrate knowing that it cannot last forever. They build and create knowing that it will eventually be destroyed. They love knowing that they will lose those they love. And yet they do these things anyway, finding meaning and joy in the present moment rather than despairing over the inevitable future. This is perhaps the greatest lesson of Asgard, that knowledge of mortality, whether personal or cosmic, should not prevent us from living fully, from creating beauty, from forming bonds, from defending what we value. The gods of Asgard are not perfect beings ruling from a place of absolute security. They are powerful but vulnerable, wise but capable of mistakes, immortal but not immune to death. They face threats from giants, from the forces of chaos, from their own poor decisions, and ultimately from fate itself. And yet they persist. They defend their realm. They honor their oaths. They maintain order in the face of chaos. They live as God should live, with courage, passion, wisdom, and an acceptance of their ultimate fate. When Ragnarok comes, Asgard will be at the center of the destruction. The Einarjar will pour out of Valhalla for the last time, marching to their final battle. The gods will don their armor and take up their weapons and ride out to face the giants and monsters. Heimdall will blow the Gyllenhorn, and its sound will echo from Asgard across all the 9 realms. Surt will come with his flaming sword, and Asgard will burn. But in that burning there is a kind of glory. The gods will not hide in their halls. They will not beg for mercy or try to bargain for their survival. They will face their doom head-on, fighting to the last breath, maintaining their honor and courage even in the face of certain defeat. This is the spirit of Asgard, not the refusal to acknowledge fate, but the determination to meet it with dignity. And after the fires die down, after the worlds sink into the sea and then rise again, some of the gods will survive. They will return to where Asgard once stood and find the golden gaming pieces in the grass. They will remember what was, speak of the old times, and then begin to build anew. Asgard will rise again in some form, perhaps different from before, perhaps better, but carrying forward the essential spirit of the divine realm, the dedication to order, justice, beauty, and the defense of what is worth defending. To understand Asgard is to understand the Norse ideal of divine kingship and authority. It is not tyrannical or absolute, but communal and consultative. It is not distant and unconcerned, but actively engaged with the lower realms. It is beautiful and golden, but also fortified and defended. It is a place of celebration, but also of constant preparation. It embodies both the heights of what civilization can achieve and the awareness that all achievements are temporary, that entropy and chaos are always at work, that vigilance and effort are required to maintain what has been built. Asgard stands at the top of Yggdrasil, but it does not stand apart from the other realms. It is connected to them through Bifrost, through Odin's journeys, through the gods' various relationships with giants and mortals. The gods of Asgard shape events across all the 9 realms, and in turn, they are shaped by those events. When a giant steals Thor's hammer, it threatens Asgard's security. When humans offer prayers and sacrifices, the gods are honored and strengthened. Everything is interconnected, and Asgard, for all its height and glory, is part of that interconnected web rather than separate from it. As we leave Asgard and prepare to ascend to the next level of Yggdrasil's branches, we carry with us an image of golden halls and rainbow bridges, of warriors feasting and gods in council, of eternal vigilance and ultimate doom bravely faced. Asgard is the aspirational realm, the place that embodies what the Norse held most dear: courage, wisdom, beauty, loyalty, and the determination to stand against chaos no matter the cost. It is a shining city on the hill, knowing full well that even shining cities can fall, and choosing to shine anyway, for as long as the light lasts. On the same elevated tier as Asgard, but distinct in character and culture, lies Vanaheim, the ancestral home of the Vanir gods. Where Asgard gleams with golden halls and martial glory, Vanaheim is a realm of deep forests, fertile fields, and ancient magic. It is a place where the rhythms of nature hold greater sway than the structures of civilization, where the mysteries of growth and decay, life and death, are understood in ways that even the Aesir do not fully grasp. The Vanir are an older tribe of gods, perhaps predating the Aesir, certainly embodying more primal aspects of divinity. They are gods of fertility, prosperity, and natural magic, the forces that make crops grow, that bring abundance to the land, that govern the cycles of life. While the Aesir concern themselves with law, war, wisdom, and the ordering of civilization, the Vanir represent the wildness beneath that order, the untamed forces that civilization depends upon but cannot fully control. Very little is recorded in the surviving sources about Vanaheim itself, which is fitting for a realm associated with mysteries and secrets. The Vanir guard their knowledge carefully, particularly their mastery of seer, the magic of seeing and shaping fate. This is not the rune magic that Odin learned through his ordeal on Yggdrasil, but something older and perhaps more fundamental, a magic that works with the threads of destiny itself, that can see what is coming and in limited ways alter it. What we do know of Vanaheim comes primarily through the stories of those Vanir who came to live in Asgard after the Great War between the 2 tribes of gods. This war, the first war in all existence, arose from a misunderstanding and escalating conflict between the Aesir and the Vanir. The details of what sparked the war vary in the telling, but one version speaks of a mysterious figure named Govig, possibly a Vanir goddess or sorceress, who came to Asgard and stirred up trouble with her magic and her talk of gold and greed. The Aesir, disturbed by her presence and her powers, tried to kill Govig. They stabbed her with spears and burned her in fire 3 times, and 3 times she was reborn from the flames, each time more powerful than before. Some scholars believe Govig may have been another name for Freya, or perhaps a separate figure whose mistreatment sparked the Vanir's rage. Regardless, the Vanir responded to this violence against one of their own by marching to war against the Aesir. The war was long and terrible, with neither side able to achieve complete victory. The Aesir had their martial prowess, their weapons, their tactical skill. But the Vanir had their magic, their deep connection to natural forces, their ability to work spells that confounded and undermined their enemies. The walls of Asgard were broken down by Vanir sorcery. The Aesir struck back with weapons and strategy. The conflict dragged on with neither side gaining the upper hand, and both beginning to realize that complete victory was impossible. Finally, the 2 tribes met to negotiate peace. As part of the peace treaty, they agreed to exchange hostages. Prominent members of each tribe would go to live among the other, ensuring that both sides had a vested interest in maintaining the peace. From Vanaheim came Njrr and his two children, Freyr and Freya, along with a wise Kvasir, who was later murdered by dwarves and whose blood became the meat of poetry. From the Aesir went Honor and Mimir, though this exchange would eventually lead to complications. The Vanir who came to Asgard were welcomed and honored, given status among the Aesir. Njrr became the god of seafaring and coastal prosperity. Freyr was given Alfheim as a tooth gift and became beloved for his generosity and his association with peace and good harvests. Freya brought her knowledge of seer magic and taught it to Odin and others, revolutionizing the Aesir's understanding of magic and fate. The integration was so successful that in later times, the distinction between Aesir and Vanir became less important, with all simply referred as gods. But Vanaheim itself remained, the homeland of the Vanir, the place where their culture and traditions continued in their purest form. It is described as a realm of great beauty, with lush vegetation, clear waters, and abundant wildlife. Where Asgard is built and ordered, Vanaheim grows and flourishes. Its power is not the power of walls and weapons, but the power of root and seed, of seasonal change, of the patient work of growth. The magic of Vanaheim is central to understanding this realm. Seer, the art practiced most skillfully by the Vanir, involves entering trance states, journeying in spirit form, seeing distant events and future possibilities, and working subtle changes in fate and fortune. It is a shamanic practice, requiring altered consciousness and a willingness to operate outside the normal boundaries of reality. In the warrior culture of the Norse, this type of magic was seen as somewhat unmanly, associated more with women and the Vanir. Yet even Odin himself sought to learn it, recognizing its power despite any social stigma. Freya was the great teacher seer, and the sources suggest she may have been a Volva, a seeress or wise woman, in addition to her other roles. When she came to Asgard, she taught the Aesir these mysteries, sharing knowledge that had previously been the exclusive domain of the Vanir. This suggests that Vanaheim is a place where such knowledge runs deep, where many practice the arts of divination and fate working, where seeing beyond the present moment is a common skill rather than a rare gift. The Vanir's association with fertility extends beyond just agriculture. They are gods of fruitfulness in all its forms, the fertility of soil and plants, of animals, of humans. They govern prosperity and abundance, the accumulation of wealth through successful harvests and herds. In this way, they represent the foundational prosperity upon which civilization is built. The Aesir might rule and defend, might create laws and wage wars, but without the abundance provided by the Vanir's influence, civilization would starve. Njrr, though he came to live by the sea in Asgard, originally hailed from Vanaheim. His association with coastal prosperity, with fishing, trading, and the wealth that comes from the sea, reflects Vanir concerns with practical abundance. The sea, like the land, can provide generously or withhold its gifts. Njrr's power lies in ensuring favorable conditions, good catches, safe voyages, and the resulting prosperity. Freyr embodies the Vanir ideal perhaps most completely. He is the god of peace and pleasure, of sunshine and rain in their proper measures, of harvest and prosperity. His sacrifice of his magical sword for love of Geir shows the Vanir priorities. Love and life take precedence over war and weapons. While this choice will cost him dearly at Ragnarok, it reflects a fundamentally different worldview from the martial culture of the Aesir. Freyr chooses fertility and union over security and violence, and in doing so, he remains true to his Vanir nature. Freya, too, represents Vanir complexity. She is a goddess of love and beauty, yes, but also of war and death. She claims half the battle slain for her hall, Sesrumnir. She practices Seer, the shaman's magic. She weeps tears of gold for her missing husband, Ar. She refuses to be traded or bargained with, as shown when she raged against the suggestion that she be given to the giant Thrym in exchange for Thor's hammer. Freya contains multitudes, embodying the Vanir understanding that life and death, love and violence, pleasure and pain are all intertwined, all part of the great cycle of existence. The peace between the Aesir and Vanir, sealed by the exchange of hostages, represents a joining of two complementary approaches to divinity. The Aesir bring order, structure, law, defense, and wisdom gained through suffering. The Vanir bring growth, abundance, natural magic, and wisdom gained through connection with the cycles of nature. Together, they create a more complete pantheon, each tribe contributing what the other lacks. This integration suggests something important about Vanaheim's role in the cosmology of the Nine Realms. It is not opposed to Asgard, but complementary to it. The two realms exist at the same level on Yggdrasil because they represent equal but different aspects of divine power. Neither is superior to the other. Both are necessary. The Norse needed gods of war and wisdom, but they also needed God of harvest and prosperity. They needed rune magic and seer, weapons and plowshares, halls of warriors and fields of grain. In Vanaheim, the connection to Yggdrasil itself might be more deeply felt than in Asgard. The world tree, after all, is a living thing, growing and changing, damaged and healed, eternally reaching upward and downward. The Vanir, with their attunement to growth and natural cycles, likely understand a tree in ways the Aesir do not. They would feel its trembling when Nidhogg gnaws at its root, sense its need for the Norn's daily ministrations, recognize their own dependence on its health and vitality. There is a sense in which Vanaheim represents a more sustainable approach to existence than Asgard's constant preparation for war. The Vanir focus on renewal, on the cycles that repeat, on growth and harvest, and rest and growth again. This is not to say they are passive or weak. Freya is a fierce warrior goddess, and the Vanir fought the Aesir to a standstill in their war. But their strength lies in resilience, in the ability to renew and restore, in working with natural forces rather than imposing order upon them through force. The forest of Vanaheim will be thick and old, full of life in all its forms. Trees that have stood for centuries, their roots deep and their branches high. Streams and rivers flowing clear and cold, meadows bursting with flowers and herbs, animals moving to the woods, predator and prey in their eternal dance. The Vanir do not seek to tame this wildness, but to live in harmony with it, to understand it, to draw strength from it. Perhaps in Vanaheim there are sacred groves where the Vanir practice their rites, places where the boundaries between the physical and spiritual worlds grow thin. Places where seer is taught, where young gods learn to send their spirits wandering, where the future is glimpsed in visions and dreams. These would be places of power and mystery, where the deepest secrets of the Vanir are kept and shared only with those deemed worthy. The architecture of Vanaheim, if it could be called that, would differ markedly from Asgard's golden halls. Perhaps the Vanir dwell in structures that blend with the natural landscape, halls built among trees, using living wood that continues to grow, creating spaces that are both crafted and organic. Or perhaps they live more simply, finding shelter and comfort in ways that leave lighter marks upon the land. The Vanir have less need for defensive walls and fortifications, protected as they are by their magic and their understanding of the natural world. At Ragnarok, the fate of Vanaheim is uncertain. The sources focus primarily on Asgard destruction and the deaths of the Aesir, but there are suggestions that the Vanir, or at least some of them, will survive the final battle. Their magic of renewal, their deep connection to life cycles, might allow them to endure what others cannot. When the new world rises from the sea after the fires die, when the earth turns green again, it will be the Vanir's domain, the realm of growth and fertility, that reasserts itself first. Perhaps Vanaheim itself will be less damaged than Asgard because it never relied so heavily on built structures that could be burned or walls that could be torn down. The forest might burn, yes, but forests have burned before and grown back. The land might flood, but land emerges from water. The cycles of Vanir understand are cycles of destruction and renewal, and they know in their bones that after every ending comes a new beginning. To understand Vanaheim is to understand the Norse appreciation for the forces that sustain life. For all their celebration of warriors and battles, the Norse were primarily farmers and fishermen, people whose survival depended on harvests and catches, on the prosperity that came from working with nature rather than against it. The Vanir gods represent this foundational reality, that courage and wisdom matter, yes, but so do fertile fields and full nets. So do successful births and healing herbs. So do the cycles of growth that make life possible. Vanaheim teaches us that there are different kinds of power, different kinds of wisdom, different kinds of magic. Not everything can be solved with a hammer or a spear. Not every problem yields to direct confrontation. Sometimes the solution lies in patience, in working with natural rhythms, in understanding that some things cannot be forced but must be allowed to unfold in their own time. This is the wisdom of the Vanir, the gift of Vanaheim to the broader cosmos. The knowledge that life, at its core, is about growth and connection, about the web of relationships that binds all living things, about the generous abundance that the world can provide when we work with it rather than simply trying to dominate it. As we prepare to leave Vanaheim and continue our journey to the 9 realms, we carry with us an appreciation for the green and growing world, for the magic that works through connection rather than command, for the gods who understand that strength can be gentle and that the most powerful forces are often those that work slowly, patiently, inevitably, like a seed-splitting stone as it grows toward the light. Sharing the highest branches of Yggdrasil with Asgard and Vanaheim is Alfheim, the realm of the light elves. This is a place of luminous beauty, where everything seems touched by an inner radiance, where the very air shimmers with subtle magic. The light elves, or Josafar, are beings of grace and enchantment, associated with light, beauty, and the gentler aspect of nature. They exist somewhere between gods and mortals, powerful but not divine, immortal but not invulnerable, deeply magical, but in ways that differ from both the rune magic of Odin and the seer of the Vanir. Alfheim was given to Freyr as a tooth gift when he was young, a present given to a child when they cut their first tooth. This suggests the realm's connection to growth, to beginnings, to the early stages of life when everything is fresh and new. That such a realm was given to Freyr, the god of fertility and peace, tells us something about its nature. Alfheim is not a place of conflict or strife, but of harmony and beauty, of things growing as they should, of the world as it appears in its most perfect moments. The light elves themselves are described as being fairer than the sun to look upon. This is high praise in Norse poetry, where the sun was often invoked as the standard of beauty and brightness. To say that the light elves surpass even the sun suggests beings of extraordinary loveliness, creatures whose very presence brings light and joy. They are tall and slender, graceful in movement, with features that seem almost too perfect to be real, as if they were carved by a master artist rather than born through natural processes. Yet for all their beauty, the light elves are not mere ornaments or passive beings. They possess considerable magical power, particularly in matters relating to growth, healing, and blessing. They can encourage plants to flourish, can help wounds to close and illnesses to pass, can bring good fortune to those they favor. Their magic is subtle rather than forceful, working with natural processes to enhance and perfect rather than override or dominate. In this way, the light elves share something with the Vanir, and their realm's placement on the same level as Vanaheim seems appropriate. Both are associated with fertility and growth, with natural magic and the flourishing of life. But where the Vanir represent the full cycle of nature, including death, decay, and renewal, the light elves seem to embody only the ascending part of that cycle, the spring and summer, the blooming and the ripening, before the harvest and the withering begin. Alfheim itself is described in the sources only briefly, but we can piece together an image from various references and from the nature of its inhabitants. It would be a realm of perpetual golden light, neither the harsh brightness of noon nor the dimness of twilight, but rather that perfect illumination of a spring morning when everything is clear and new. The landscape would be beautiful beyond mortal comprehension. Rolling meadows dotted with flowers that never fade, forests where the trees are always in bloom, streams that run crystal clear over beds of smooth stones that catch and reflect the light. The architecture of Alfheim, if the Light Elves build structures at all, will be elegant and refined, incorporating natural forms elevated to their highest expression. Towers that spiral like seashells, bridges that arc like rainbows, halls whose walls are thin as flower petals, yet strong as steel. Everything would be crafted with perfect attention to proportion and harmony, creating spaces that feel both grand and intimate, both substantial and airy. Music would fill Alfheim constantly, not the martial songs of Valhalla or the work songs of Midgard, but melodies of such beauty that they would bring tears to mortal eyes. The Light Elves are masters of all the arts, poetry, song, dance, the crafting of beautiful objects. They create not out of necessity, but out of love for beauty itself, for the joy of making something that captures and expresses the ideal form of what something could be. There are connections between Alfheim and Midgard, the realm of mortals, though these connections are subtle and often mysterious. Humans sometimes encounter the Light Elves, or at least catch glimpses of them, particularly in liminal places and times, at dawn or dusk, in deep forests or beside still waters, in those moments when the boundary between the ordinary world and the magical world grows thin. These encounters are generally beneficial, leaving humans blessed rather than cursed, though sometimes also change in ways they do not fully understand. The Light Elves are particular about courtesy and proper behavior. They reward respect and kindness, but they are offended by rudeness or carelessness. A farmer who honors the elves with small offerings, who treats the land gently and speaks well to the unseen folk, might find that his crops grow better than his neighbors, that his livestock thrives, that small pieces of good fortune come his way. But one who mocks the elves or damages places sacred to them might find the opposite. Unexplained illnesses, crops that fail, a general sense of things going wrong. This is not malice on the part of the Light Elves, but rather a kind of natural consequence. They are beings of blessing and flourishing, and when someone aligns himself with those principles through respectful behavior, the elves' nature flows toward them. But when someone opposes those principles through disrespect or harm, they place themselves outside the sphere of elvish blessing and may even draw negative attention. The Light Elves are also associated with the souls of the dead, or at least certain dead. There are references in the sources to some honored dead becoming like elves, joining them in Alfheim rather than going to Hell's realm or to the halls of Odin or Freya. This suggests that Alfheim is not merely a place for a separate species of beings, but also a kind of afterlife for those who live with particular grace or virtue, who embodied in their mortal lives the qualities that the Light Elves represent: beauty, harmony, creativity, kindness. If this is true, then Alfheim serves as a form of paradise, a reward for certain souls who showed special qualities during their lives. This would make it quite different from Valhalla, which honors warriors who died in battle, or from Freya's Sessrumnir, which also receives battle dead. Alfheim would welcome those whose excellence lay in other directions: artists, healers, those who brought beauty into the world, those who lived gently and well. Freyr's rulership over Alfheim, or at least his association with it as its lord, adds another dimension to understanding this god. Freyr is not a warrior god, though he can fight when necessary. He is not a god of wisdom or magic, though he has his own powers. He is a god of peace, prosperity, and pleasure, of the good things in life that make existence joyful rather than merely survivable. That he should be connected to Alfheim, realm of beauty and blessing, seems entirely fitting. His presence there ensures that the realm serves its purpose, that its blessings flow out to the other worlds, that its light continues to shine. There are stories of mortals who were taken to Alfheim, either briefly or permanently, and who return changed by the experience. A common thread in these tales is that time flows differently in Alfheim than in Midgard. A person might spend what seems like a single evening feasting in an elvish hall, only to return to a mortal world and discover that years or even decades have passed. Or the reverse might happen. A mortal might live for what feels like years in Alfheim, learning elvish arts and wisdom, only to return to Midgard and find that just a single night has elapsed. This time distortion speaks to Alfheim's nature as a place somewhat removed from the normal flow of the cosmos. It exists on the same level of Yggdrasil as Asgard and Vanheim, yet it seems to operate by different rules, to exist in a space that is adjacent to normal reality rather than fully part of it. This gives it a dreamlike quality, a sense that everything there is both more and less real than the solid, concrete reality of Midgard. The Light Elves have their own hierarchy and social structure, though it is less warlike than that of the gods, and less concerned with clear chains of command. They seem to operate more through consensus and natural authority. Those who are wisest and most skilled in the elvish arts have influence and respect, but there is no mention of elvish kings waging wars or passing laws. Their society functions more like an artist collective or a community of scholars, with each member contributing what they do best and all working together to maintain the beauty and harmony of their realm. Magic in Alfheim is ubiquitous but rarely ostentatious. Rather than spectacular displays of power, elvish magic manifests as gentle enhancements of what already exists. A flower that blooms more perfectly than any flower should. A song that moves the heart more deeply than music ought to. A healing that happens more quickly and completely than nature alone would provide. The Light Elves work their will not through force, but through refinement, taking what is and making it closer to what it could ideally be. This approach to magic reflects a fundamentally different philosophy from the Aesir's use of power. The gods often work through dramatic action. Thor striking with his hammer, Odin hanging himself from Yggdrasil, Freya weeping tears of gold. The Light Elves work through subtle perfection, through the accumulation of small beauties and gentle influences that together create something greater than any single dramatic act could achieve. At Ragnarok, the fate of Alfheim is uncertain. The sources focus on the destruction of Asgard and the battles of the gods, with little mention of what happens to the Light Elves during the final cataclysm. Perhaps Alfheim, like Vanheim, will be less affected by the cosmic destruction, protected by its somewhat removed position, its dreamlike quality that places adjacent to rather than fully within the flow of violent events. Or perhaps the Light Elves will simply fade as the sun is devoured and darkness covers all, their nature too tied to light and beauty to survive in a world consumed by fire and chaos. Yet there is reason to hope that Alfheim will endure in some form, or at least that its essence will persist. When the new world rises from the sea after Ragnarok, when the surviving gods gather in the grass where Asgard once stood, that world is described as green and beautiful, as fertile and perfect. This sounds very much like a world infused with the qualities of Alfheim, as if the Light Elves' influence will be woven into the very fabric of the renewed creation. Perhaps in that new world, the distinction between gods, elves, and mortals will be less sharp. Perhaps the best of each will combine, creating beings who possess the strength of the Aesir, the connection to nature of the Vanir, the beauty and grace of the Light Elves, and the adaptability and resilience of humanity. This would be a true renewal, not merely a restoration of what was, but a transformation into something better. The Light Elves remind us that beauty matters, that grace and harmony are not mere luxuries, but essential aspects of a life worth living. In a mythology filled with battles and betrayals, with cosmic struggles and inevitable doom, Alfheim stands as a reminder that there is more to existence than conflict. There is also the perfect bloom of a flower, the soaring arc of melody, the gentle touch of healing hands, the quiet satisfaction of creating something beautiful. The Norse people, for all their reputation as warriors and raiders, also valued these things. They created intricate art, carved elaborate decorations on their ships and homes, composed complex poetry, appreciated the beauty of their harsh northern landscape. They understood that a life dedicated solely to fighting and surviving was not enough, that humans need beauty and joy and moment of transcendence to make life meaningful. Alfheim represents this understanding elevated to its highest form. It is what the world could be if beauty and harmony were allowed to flourish without interference. If every living thing could reach its fullest potential, if grace and perfection were the norm rather than a rare exception. It stands as both an ideal to aspire to and a gift freely given. The light elves do not hoard their blessings, but share them with those who are receptive, spreading their influence across the realms, touching even Midgard with moments of unexpected beauty and inexplicable grace. As we prepare to descend from the highest branches of Yggdrasil to the middle level of the world tree, we carry with us the light of Alfheim, the memory of perfect beauty, the knowledge that even in a cosmos that will eventually end in fire and flood, there are places and beings dedicated to creating and preserving what is lovely, what is graceful, what brings joy and wonder to all who encounter it. This light may be subtle, but it is no less real or important for its gentleness. Indeed, perhaps it is in the gentle things that the deepest truths reside. In the middle branches of Yggdrasil, encircled by the great ocean and the coils of Jormungand of the world serpent, lies Midgard, the Middle Earth, the realm of humanity. This is our world, the place where mortal men and women live their brief lives, struggling against the elements, building their homes and communities, farming and fishing, loving and dying. Midgard is neither as glorious as Asgard nor as terrible as Niflheim, neither as beautiful as Alfheim nor as chaotic as Jotunheim. It is instead the middle place, the realm of balance and struggle, where mortality gives meaning to every choice and every moment. Midgard was created by Odin, Vili, and Ve from the body of the slain giant Ymir. His flesh became the earth, his blood the seas, his bones the mountains, his teeth and broken bones the cliffs and stones. But the creation of the land was not enough. The three brothers understood that this world needed inhabitants, beings who would dwell upon it and give it purpose. And so one day, as they walked along the seashore, they found two trees that had washed up on the beach, an ash and an elm. These trees held potential, but they were merely wood, without consciousness or spirit. The brothers decided to grant them life and form them into the first humans. Odin breathed into them the gift of spirit and life itself, giving them Ond, the animating force that separates the living from the dead. Vili gave them Ar, consciousness and thought, the ability to understand and reason and feel. Ve granted them the physical senses, sight and hearing, speech and appearance, giving them faces and voices, the ability to perceive the world and interact with it. And thus were born Ask and Embla, the first man and woman, ancestors of all humanity. The gods built Midgard specifically for these humans, creating a stronghold to protect them from the giants and other threats. Using Ymir's eyebrows, they constructed a great wall around the habitable lands, forming a fortress that would shield humanity from the dangers that lurk beyond. This wall, while not impenetrable, represented the gods' commitment to protecting their mortal children, to maintaining a space where humans could live with some measure of safety. Yet, Midgard is no paradise. It is a realm of harsh realities, where survival requires constant work, where winter brings cold and hunger, where the sea can be both provider and destroyer, where illness and injury claim lives with cruel regularity. The Norse who lived in Midgard knew this intimately. They inhabited lands where farming was difficult, where the growing season was short, where the dark winters tested endurance and resolve. Their mythology reflected this reality, creating a world that was beautiful but dangerous, fertile but harsh, filled with both blessings and threats. The connection between Midgard and Asgard is maintained by Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that arcs across the sky. The gods can descend this bridge to walk in Midgard, to involve themselves in human affairs, to father children with mortal women, to teach and guide, and sometimes punish. This accessibility sets the Norse gods apart from more distant divinities. They are not remote beings who observe from afar, but active participants in the human world, invested in humanity's success or failure. Thor, in particular, is Midgard's great defender. While Odin may be the All-Father and the King of the gods, it is Thor whom humans call upon when they need protection. Thor's journeys to Jotunheim to battle giants are not mere displays of strength, but defensive actions, keeping the forces of chaos from overwhelming Midgard. Every giant Thor slays is one less threat to human farms and villages. The thunder and lightning of his passing, frightening as they might be, are signs that he is at work protecting the Middle Realm. The humans of Midgard honor the gods through worship and sacrifice, building altars and making offerings. They invoke Odin for wisdom in making difficult decisions, Thor for protection against threats, Freyr for good harvests, Freya for luck and love and prosperity. They swear oaths on Thor's hammer, call upon Tyr for justice, and look to Heimdall as the divine ancestor of their social order. In return, the gods grant their favor, or at least do not withhold it, allowing humans to prosper within the limits of their mortality. But Midgard is not solely defined by its relationship with Asgard. It exists in the middle not just physically, but conceptually, caught between the order of the gods above and the chaos of the giants beyond the wall. Humans must navigate between these forces, seeking the protection of the gods, while also dealing with the reality that giants and other dangerous beings exist in the world and cannot always be kept at bay. The great ocean that surrounds Midgard is both a boundary and a pathway. Beyond the familiar lands lie unknown regions, territories that might be inhabited by other peoples or by beings more strange and dangerous. The ocean itself is home to Jormungandr, the world serpent, who lies coiled around Midgard with his tail in his mouth. This serpent is so vast that he encircles the entire world, and his presence is a constant reminder that even in the Middle Realm, the forces of chaos are never far away. Sailors venturing out into this ocean face not just natural dangers, but supernatural ones. There are sea monsters and hostile beings, storms that might be the work of angry spirits or giants, whirlpools that could drag ships down to unknown depths. Yet the Norse were a seafaring people, and they braved these dangers constantly, trusting in their skill, their courage, and the favor of the gods to see them through. The forests of Midgard are deep and dark, filled with game but also with danger. Wolves and bears threaten livestock, and occasionally humans. The deep woods are places where one might encounter the supernatural, elves, dwarves, spirits of various kinds, or even giants who have wandered too close to human habitation. These forests are necessary, providing wood for building and fuel, but there are also liminal spaces, boundaries between the safe and cultivated lands and the wild unknown. Within Midgard, humans create their own order and meaning. They build halls and homesteads, establish laws and customs, form families and communities. The social structure that Heimdall established, the three classes of thralls, carls, and jarls, provides a framework for human society, though individual humans can rise or fall based on their deeds and luck. Honor and reputation are paramount. For in a world where life is brief and death is certain, what one leaves behind in memory is all that endures. The Norse concept of Wird, fate or destiny, is particularly relevant in Midgard. Humans are subject to fate even more than the gods, lacking divine power to resist or alter what the Norns have woven. Yet this does not lead to fatalism or passivity. Instead, it creates a focus on how one meets one's fate, on the courage and dignity with which one faces the inevitable. A person cannot choose when or how they will die, but they can choose to face death bravely, to maintain their honor, to leave behind a story worth telling. The heroes of Midgard, mortal men and women whose deeds are remembered in saga and song, embody this principle. They are not superhuman, not possess of divine powers, yet through courage, cunning, and strength of will, they accomplish great things. They slay monsters, undertake impossible journeys, maintain their honor in the face of overwhelming odds, and ultimately accept their mortality with grace. These heroes serve as models for how humans should live, demonstrating that even in a realm of limitation and death, greatness is possible. Magic exists in Midgard, though it is rarer and more difficult than in the divine realms. Some humans learn the runes and can carve them for protection or power. Vulvas, female seers, practice seer and can see the future or work subtle spells. There are herbs and charms, rituals and invocations, ways of appealing to the spirits and powers that inhabit the world. But magic is not the dominant force in Midgard that it is elsewhere. Humans must rely primarily on their own strength, skill, and courage, with magic as a supplement rather than a solution. The cycle of seasons governs life in Midgard, perhaps more than in any other realm. Spring brings planting and hope. Summer brings growth and long days of work. Autumn brings harvest and preparation. Winter brings darkness and the constant threat of starvation and freezing. These cycles are not mere background, but matters of life and death. A failed harvest means hunger. A hard winter means people die. The gods can influence these cycles. Freyr's favor brings good harvests. Thor's thunder brings rain. But they do not control them absolutely. Nature in Midgard has its own rhythms, and humans must work with them as best they can. Death is a defining characteristic of Midgard, the reality that separates humans from gods and elves. Mortals age, sicken, and die, their time limited to a few decades at best. This mortality gives urgency and meaning to human life. Choices matter because there is limited time to make them. Relationships are precious because they will end. Achievements are significant because they are wrested from a brief span of years against the constant threat of death. Where humans go when they die depends on how they lived and how they died. Warriors who fall in battle might be claimed by the Valkyries and taken to Valhalla or Sesrumner, there to feast and fight until Ragnarok. Others go to Hell's realm, where they dwell in quiet halls, neither punished nor particularly rewarded, simply existing in a shadowy reflection of life. The specific destination matters less than the understanding that death is not an ending but a transition, that some part of the person continues beyond the failure of the body. Midgard is where the great stories happen, where heroes rise and fall, where humans struggle against their limitations and sometimes transcend them. The gods watch these struggles with interest, sometimes intervening, sometimes merely observing. They see in humanity something that even the divine do not possess, the poignancy that comes from limitation, the courage that only mortality can create, the fierce determination to matter despite knowing that death is certain and time is short. At Ragnarok, Midgard will suffer terribly. The Fimbulwinter will bring 3 years of unrelenting cold, causing starvation and conflict as humans fight over dwindling resources. Families will turn on each other, brothers will slay brothers, all social bonds will dissolve. When the final battle comes and Jormungandr rises from the ocean, the seas will flood the land. The earth will sink beneath the waves. Most of humanity will perish in these catastrophes, die in the cold or the floods or the violence that precedes the end. But not all will die. 2 humans, Lif and Lefracer, whose names mean life and eager for life, will survive by hiding in Hodmimis Wood, a sacred grove that will be protected from the destruction. They will shelter there through the worst of the cataclysm, sustaining themselves on morning dew. And when the earth rises again from the sea, green and fertile and new, Lif and Lefracer will emerge to repopulate the world. This promise of renewal is essential to understanding Midgard's place in the cosmic story. For all its hardships and limitations, Midgard endures. Humanity survives. The middle realm rises from the sea, ready to begin again. The gods may fall at Ragnarok. Most of them will. But humanity persists. In the New World, Lifin, Fraser's descendants, will live in a Midgard that is more beautiful and bountiful than before, where crops grow without planting, where suffering is lessened if not eliminated, where the harsh conditions that made life so difficult in the old world are softened. This suggests that Midgard is, in some sense, the most important of all the realms. The gods exist to protect and guide humanity. The giants threaten but also test humanity, forcing people to be strong and vigilant. The elves bless humanity with beauty and magic. Even the dead in Hell's realm were once living humans. Everything in the cosmic order relates, in some way, to Midgard and its inhabitants. The middle realm teaches us about limitation and what can be accomplished within it. It shows us that mortality, rather than being merely a curse, is what makes life meaningful and precious. It demonstrates that ordinary people, without divine powers or supernatural abilities, can nonetheless live lives of courage, honor, and significance. It reminds us of the struggle to survive, to protect what we love, to create meaning in a world that offers none. This is the essential human story, and it is no less important than the grand dramas of gods and giants. Midgard is where we live. It is the realm we know intimately, the world of earth and sky, of seasons and storms, of birth and death. The Norse mythology places this human realm at the very center of the cosmic tree, surrounded by the serpent, protected by the gods, connected to all other realms. We are not peripheral to the story of existence, but central to it. Our brief lives, our struggles and triumphs, our capacity to face mortality with courage, these matter not just to us but to the gods themselves, who watch and sometimes weep at human tragedy, who celebrate human victories, who recognize in humanity something essential and irreplaceable. As we prepare to continue our journey through the 9 realms, exploring the lands of giants and dwarves, of fire and ice, we remember that Midgard is the measure against which all other realms are judged. It is the middle place, the balance point, the realm that contains both great suffering and great joy, both harsh limitation and transcendent meaning. It is quite simply home and all the beauty and tragedy that word contains. Beyond the protective walls of Midgard, in the wild and untamed regions of the middle branches of Yggdrasil, lies Jotunheim, the home of the giants, the Jotun. This is a realm of towering mountains and deep forests, of fierce rivers and harsh weather, of ancient strongholds carved into stone and halls built on a scale that dwarfs anything in the human world. Jotunheim represents the forces of nature in their rawest, most powerful form, untamed, unpredictable, and often hostile to the ordered world of God and humans. The giants themselves are beings of immense size and strength, though not all are literally gigantic in stature. The word Jotun is better understood as meaning something like devourer or one who eats, suggesting beings whose appetites, whether for food, power, or chaos, are larger than life. They are the original inhabitants of the cosmos, predating the gods, descended from Ymir, the first being whose body became the world itself. In this sense, the giants are more primordial than the gods, representing the fundamental forces of existence before they were shaped into order. The relationship between the gods and the giants is complex and contradictory. They are enemies, locked in eternal conflict, with the gods defending civilization against the chaos the giants represent. Yet they are also interrelated through blood and marriage. Odin's mother was a giantess. Many gods have taken giant wives or lovers. Loki, who lives among the gods, is himself a giant by birth. This intricate web of kinship and enmity suggests that the boundary between order and chaos, between gods and giants, is not as clear as it might first appear. Jotunheim is divided into different regions, each with its own character. There are mountain ranges so high that their peaks pierce the clouds, where frost giants dwell in halls carved from ice and stone. There are deep forests where giants hunt game of prodigious size. There are rivers that flow cold and swift, too dangerous for any but the strongest swimmers to cross. The landscape itself seemed scaled for beings larger than human, with everything grander, more dramatic, more extreme than the measured lands of Midgard. The stronghold of the giants are impressive structures, often built with more concern for strength and beauty. Tgar, the fortress of Tgarloki, is described as being so large that Thor and his companions had to crane their necks back to see the top of its walls. The gates were so massive that Thor could walk through the bars without opening them. Inside, the hall was vast enough to hold hundreds of giants feasting together, their voices like thunder, their appetites enormous. Yet despite their strength and size, the giants are not merely brutish. Many possess great wisdom, particularly knowledge of ancient things, of secrets predating the current order of the world. Mimir, the wise being who guards a well of wisdom, is often identified as a giant, and his knowledge is so profound that even after his death, Odin preserves his head to consult it for counsel. The giant Vafnir was known for his wisdom, and Odin once disguised himself to engage in a contest of knowledge with him, each asking the other questions about the cosmos, the gods, and fate itself. This wisdom often takes the form of ancient memory. The giants remember what came before the gods, before the current order. They know the old ways, the original chaos, the time when existence was simpler and wilder. This makes them dangerous in a particular way. They are not merely strong, but also knowledgeable about things the gods who prefer remain forgotten or unknown. The giant women or giantesses are particularly interesting figures in mythology. They are often portrayed as beautiful and powerful, possessing their own magic and wisdom. Skadi, who married Engerar, was a formidable warrior and huntress. Geir, whom Freyr loved, was so beautiful that light shone from her arms. Gunnel, who guarded the meat of poetry, showed compassion even while being deceived. These giantesses are not mere monsters, but complex individuals with their own agency, desires, and power. Many giantesses possess magical abilities, particularly in the areas of prophecy and shape-shifting. They can see the future, cast illusions, transform themselves or others, work spells that confound even the gods. This magic is different from both the rune magic of Odin and the seer of the Vanir. It seems more primal, more directly connected to fundamental forces of existence, less refined but perhaps more potent for that very lack of refinement. The frost giants, or Hermerser, are associated with winter, ice, and cold. They embody the harsh northern winter that the Norse knew well, the season that could kill through cold and starvation, that tested endurance and will. These giants threaten to bring eternal winter, to freeze the fertile lands, to end the cycle of seasons that makes life possible. Thor's battles against them are therefore not mere adventuring, but defensive actions against existential threats. There are also fire giants, though they dwell primarily in Muspelheim, rather than Jotunheim proper. The mountain giants seem to be more neutral, neither inherently hostile nor friendly, simply existing in their remote strongholds, occasionally interacting with gods or humans, but mostly keeping to themselves. This diversity among the giants reminds us that they are not a monolithic force, but a varied collection of beings, each with their own nature and motivations. Jotunheim is separated from Asgard by the river Ifang, which never freezes. This river forms a boundary that helps protect the god's realm, though it is not impassable. Thor regularly wades through rivers to reach Jotunheim for his giant-slaying expeditions. The gods can visit Jotunheim when they choose, though they do so with caution, aware that they are entering hostile territory, where they lack the home advantage they enjoy in Asgard. The journey to Jotunheim is often portrayed as difficult and dangerous. When Thor travels there, he must wade through deep rivers, cross mountains, navigate forests, deal with harsh weather. The landscape itself seems to resist intrusion, as if the very land of the giants works to discourage visitors from the ordered realms. This reflects the giants' nature as forces of wildness and chaos. Even their homeland is untamed, challenging, resistant to easy passage. Despite the enmity between gods and giants, there are moments of peaceful interaction, even hospitality. Giants sometimes host gods in their halls, offering food and drink, engaging in contests and conversations. These moments reveal that the conflict between order and chaos is not absolute, that there are spaces where the two can coexist, at least temporarily. The tension is always present, the possibility of violence always near. But there are also moments of truce, of mutual respect, even of friendship. The giant's appetite for destruction is often checked not by inability, but by the gods' active defense. Left unchecked, the giants would overwhelm Midgard and even threaten Asgard itself. It is Thor's constant vigilance, his regular expeditions into Jotunheim to slay troublesome giants, that keeps the forces of chaos at bay. Without these defensive actions, the delicate balance between order and wildness would collapse, and the giants would devour the ordered world. Yet the giants serve an important purpose in the cosmic order. They provide opposition, challenge, the testing force that keeps the gods sharp and strong. Without the threat of giants, the gods would have no purpose, no reason to maintain their vigilance and power. The existence of Jotunheim and its inhabitants gives meaning to the gods' role as defenders and maintainers of order. In this dialectical relationship, each side defines and gives purpose to the other. There are stories of giants who show unexpected nobility or kindness. The giantess Gerar, who warned Thor about Gareth's trap and lent him her staff and gloves, acted against her own kind's interests to help the god. This suggests that individual giants can transcend their chaotic nature, can choose to align themselves with order rather than destruction. It also complicates the simple narrative of gods as good and giants as evil, suggesting instead a more nuanced understanding where individual choices matter more than categorical allegiance. The giants possess treasures and knowledge that the gods sometimes need. The meat of poetry was held by the giant Suttungr before Odin stole it. The giant Hymir owned a cauldron large enough to brew ale for all the gods, which they needed for their feasts. The giants control access to certain places and things that even the gods cannot simply take by force, but must acquire through cunning, theft, or negotiation. This gives a giant a kind of power that does not depend solely on physical strength. The power of possession, of controlling access to necessary resources. In Jotunheim, time and space seem to work differently than in the ordered realms. The Hall of Tgar Loki demonstrated this when Thor and his companions discovered that their challenges were not what they seemed. The drinking horn was connected to the ocean. The cat was actually the world serpent. The old woman was age itself. This suggests that Jotunheim exists in a space where reality is more fluid, where appearances deceive, where the fundamental nature of things can be masked or transformed. It is a liminal realm, a place of threshold and transformation, where the rules that govern Asgard and Midgard do not fully apply. The giants' halls often contain wonders, magical items, ancient artifacts, beings of strange and terrifying power. These are places of both danger and opportunity, where a clever visitor might gain something of great value, but where a careless one might lose their life. The gods' expeditions into Jotunheim often have this quality of questing into the unknown, of venturing beyond the safe and familiar into a realm where anything might happen. As Ragnarok approaches, Jotunheim will empty as the giants march to war. They will be led by H.R. Wyam, sailing on the ship Naglfar made from dead men's nails. The Frost Giants will march alongside the Fire Giants from Muspelheim, united in their assault on Asgard. This coalition of giants represents the ultimate triumph of chaos over order, the moment when all the forces of wildness and destruction combine to overthrow the gods' rule. The giants will break the walls that separate their realm from the ordered world. They will cross boundaries that should not be crossed, violate the careful balance that has been maintained since the beginning. This is not merely revenge for the death of Ymir or for the many giants slain by Thor over the ages, though those grievances certainly factor in. It is, more fundamentally, The reassertion of chaos, the return to primordial state before order was imposed, before the world was shaped and structured and made safe for gods and humans. Yet even in the destruction of Ragnarok, the giants' role is ambiguous. They fight to destroy the gods, yes, but in doing so, they also destroy themselves. The mutual annihilation of gods and giants suggests that neither pure order nor pure chaos can exist alone, that each defines itself in opposition to the other, and that when one falls, the other must fall as well. The new world that rises after Ragnarok will presumably need to find a new balance, a new way of relating order to chaos that does not depend on eternal enmity. Jotunheim teaches us about the necessity of wildness, about the forces that resist order and structure. It reminds us that civilization is an achievement, not a given, that the order world exists only because it is constantly defended and maintained against forces that would tear it down. It shows us that chaos is not inherently evil, but rather a fundamental aspect of existence, necessary and even valuable in its proper place, dangerous only when it threatens to overwhelm everything else. The giants, for all their threat to Asgard and Midgard, are also ancestors and kin, sources of wisdom and power, beings whose existence gives meaning and purpose to the gods' actions. They represent the untamed natural world, the forces of storm and winter and wild growth, the ancient memory of what came before civilization. They are necessary opponents, necessary others, without whom the gods themselves would have no role to play. As we prepare to continue deeper into the 9 realms, we remember Jotunheim not as a realm of pure evil, but as a place of raw power, ancient wisdom, and necessary opposition. It is the wilderness that surrounds a cultivated garden, the storm that tests the strength of structures, the chaos that makes order meaningful. It is vast and dangerous and beautiful in its own terrible way, and it is as essential to the cosmos as any of the realms of light and order. Deep within the middle branches of Yggdrasil, beneath mountains and stone, lies Svartalfheim, the realm of the dark elves and dwarves. This is a world of caverns and tunnels, of forge fires glowing in the darkness, of underground halls carved from living rock. It is a place where the greatest treasures of the cosmos are crafted, where master smiths work metal and stone with such skill that their creations seem to possess life and will of their own. Svartalfheim is a realm of shadows and secrets, of craftsmanship elevated to the level of magic, of beings who dwell in darkness yet create objects of incomparable beauty and power. The relationship between dark elves and dwarves in the sources is somewhat unclear, with some texts treating them as the same beings and others as distinct. The dwarves, or Svartalfar, are described as beings who originated from the maggots that formed in Ymir's flesh after his death. The gods gave these creatures form and consciousness, granting them human-like shape and intelligence. Yet the dwarves retain something of their origin in decay and earth. They cannot abide sunlight, which turns them to stone, and so they remain always underground, in the darkness that is their natural element. Despite their grim origins, the dwarves are the finest craftsmen in all the 9 realms. Their skill surpasses that of gods, giants, and mortals alike. They can work any material, gold, silver, iron, stone, even substances that seem impossible to shape, and from these materials they create wonders. The greatest treasures of the gods were forged in dwarf workshops. Thor's hammer Mjolnir, Odin's spear Gungnir and ring Draupnir, Freyr's ship Splenir and boar Gullinbursti, Sif's golden hair, and countless other items of power and beauty. The halls of Svartalfheim are described as being magnificent in their own dark way. They are not bright like Asgard or naturally beautiful like Alfheim, but they possess a different aesthetic. The beauty of perfect craftsmanship, of stone carved with absolute precision, of metal worked to impossible thinness and strength, of gems that catch and reflect the light of forged fires. Everything in these halls speaks to mastery of material, to the transformation of raw substance into perfected form. The forge is the heart of dwarf culture and power. Here, in chambers deep beneath the earth, where the heat from the world's molten core can be harnessed, the dwarves work their craft. The ring of hammer on anvil echoes through stone passages. The glow of molten metal illuminates, faces intent on their work. These are not mere blacksmiths, but artists and magicians, individuals who understand the fundamental properties of matter and can coax from it forms and functions that seem miraculous. The creation of Mjolnir demonstrates the dwarves' skill and the intense conditions under which they work. When the brothers Sindri and Brokkr forged Thor's hammer, Sindri worked the bellows while instructing Brokkr not to stop pumping no matter what happened. Loki, desperate to make them fail, transformed into a fly and repeatedly stung Brokkr, trying to make him pause. Brokkr endured the pain and continued pumping, though when Loki stung him on the eyelid during the final stage, he faltered for just a moment. This brief pause resulted in Mjolnir's handle being slightly shorter than intended, the only flaw in an otherwise perfect weapon. This story reveals that even in their underground realm, the dwarves must contend with interference from the gods and other beings. Yet their dedication to craft allows them to create wonders despite such obstacles. The dwarves are not generous with their creations. They must be bargained with, tricked, or compelled to part with their treasures. When Loki came to them seeking gifts to replace Sif's shorn hair, he played the dwarves against each other, challenging one set to create gifts and then wagering with another set that they couldn't do better. This competition between craftsmen resulted in some of the gods' greatest treasures, but Loki nearly lost his head for his presumption when he tried to weasel out of paying the agreed price. This transactional nature of dwarf relationships reflects their character. They value their work and expect appropriate compensation. They are not malicious, but neither are they charitable. They understand the worth of what they create and will not be cheated of it. Many stories tell of those who tried to obtain dwarf treasures through deception or force, only to discover that the dwarves are more clever than they appear, and that their creations sometimes contain hidden conditions or curses for those who acquire them improperly. The dwarves possess knowledge of runes and magic, though their approach differs from that of the gods. Where Odin's rune magic involves understanding cosmic principles, dwarf rune work is more practical and immediate. Runes of binding, of strengthening, of shaping material properties. They carve runes into their creations to give them special properties. Unbreakable strength, the ability to never miss a target, the power to return to the wielder's hand. This is magic as engineering, as a precise application of symbolic power to achieve specific, measurable results. Among the most famous dwarves are the brothers who created the gods' treasures. The sons of Ivaldi crafted Gungnir, Splanir, and Sif's golden hair. Sindri and Brokkr forged Gullinbursti, Draupnir, and Mjolnir. But there are many other named dwarves in the sources, each presumably a master of some craft or keeper of some knowledge. Andvari possessed a ring that could multiply gold, though it carried a curse. Dvalin was wise in rune lore. Alvis, whose name means all-wise, sought to marry Thor's daughter and had to prove his knowledge in a contest with Thor, who kept him talking until sunrise turned him to stone. This vulnerability to sunlight is one of the defining characteristics of the dwarves. They are creatures of the underground, of darkness and stone and forged fire. The sun represents everything they are not: bright, open, exposed, natural rather than crafted. To be caught in sunlight is to be transformed back into the stone from which they were originally formed, losing consciousness and agency, becoming merely part of the landscape. This keeps them bound to Svartalfheim and to the underground passages that connect different parts of their realm. The Dark Elves, when distinguished from dwarves, are described as similar in appearance, but perhaps less focused on craftsmanship. They are associated with darkness and earth, with hidden things and secret knowledge. Some sources suggest they are spirits of the dead or beings connected to ancestor worship. Others portray them as simply another race of underground dwellers, sharing Svartalfheim with the dwarves but maintaining their own culture and concerns. Whether as separate races or different names for the same beings, both dark elves and dwarves represent aspects of existence that are hidden, that dwell beneath the surface, that work in darkness to create things of value. They're the miners and smiths, the craftsmen and engineers, those who transform raw material into useful or beautiful objects. In a cosmos that often emphasizes warriors and wise ones, they represent the equally important virtues of skill, patience, and the knowledge of how things work at a fundamental level. The tunnels of Svartalfheim extend far and deep, connecting different parts of the realm, and perhaps even reaching to other realms. Some passages lead upward to Midgard, where dwarves occasionally emerge at night to trade or to recover materials they need for their work. Other passages delve down toward Nibelheim and the roots of Yggdrasil, where the oldest and strangest dwarf holds are said to exist. These deep places are shunned even by most dwarves, for what dwells in such depths is uncertain and possibly dangerous. In these underground halls, the dwarves have accumulated vast hoards of treasure, gold and silver, precious gems, weapons and armor, magical items of every description, all the wealth created by countless generations of master craftsmen, plus tribute and payment received from gods and giants and mortals. Yet they do not display this wealth ostentatiously. It is kept in secured vaults, guarded carefully, used only when necessary. The dwarves are not motivated by greed in the simple sense, but by an appreciation for the value of well-crafted objects and the labor that goes into creating them. The social structure of Svartalfheim seems to be based on skill and mastery rather than hereditary rank. The greatest craftsmen command respect and authority. Those who can create the finest work or who possess the deepest knowledge are looked to as leaders. This creates a culture that values achievement and expertise, where status must be earned through demonstrated ability rather than claimed through birth or force. There are mentions of dwarf women in some sources, though they appear rarely in the surviving stories. This has led to speculation about how dwarf society reproduces and continues, with various theories proposed but little definitive evidence. What seems clear is that the dwarves continue to exist generation after generation, maintaining their craft traditions, passing down techniques and knowledge from master to apprentice, ensuring that the skills that produce their wonders are not lost. The dwarves' relationship with the gods is complex and somewhat wary. The gods need what the dwarves can create and are willing to pay for it or bargain for it. But there's an underlying tension. The gods possess divine power and authority, but the dwarves possess skill and knowledge that the gods cannot duplicate. Neither can simply dominate the other, so they must deal with each other as something approaching equals, even though their natures and values are very different. When humans seek dwarf craftsmanship, they must be even more careful than the gods. A mortal who enters Svartalfheim seeking a dwarf-made weapon or magical item must be prepared to offer something of genuine value in exchange. Not just gold, which the dwarves have in abundance, but something unique or personal, something that represents real sacrifice. And they must be careful to fulfill any bargains exactly as agreed, for the dwarves have long memories and do not forget those who cheat or insult them. At Ragnarok, the fate of Svartalfheim and its inhabitants is largely unmentioned in the surviving sources. The focus is on the battles above ground, on the clash of gods and giants, on the burning of the world and its submersion beneath the waves. But the underground realm, deep within stone and earth, might be more protected than the surface world. The dwarves, in their deep halls, might endure what others cannot, emerging when the world is renewed to craft the treasures of the new age. This possibility is suggested by the nature of craftsmanship itself. It is a skill that can be taught and preserved that does not depend on divine power or natural magic, but on knowledge, technique, and practice. Even if the old world burns, the knowledge of how to work metal and stone remains. Even if the surface floods, the forges deep underground might still burn. The dwarves, as preservers of practical knowledge and makers of lasting things, seem well-positioned to survive and to help rebuild. Svartalfheim teaches us about the value of craftsmanship, about the transformation of raw material into something greater, about the patience and skill required to create lasting beauty and utility. It reminds us that not all power comes from strength or magic, that there's profound power in understanding how things work and being able to make them better. It shows us that darkness is not always evil, that the underground is not always a place of horror, that what dwells in shadow can create things of great worth and wonder. The realm of the dwarves and dark elves is a testament to the Norse appreciation for skilled work, for the makers and crafters who build the tools and treasures that make civilization possible, for a culture that valued fine weapons, beautiful jewelry, well-built ships, and sturdy halls. The dwarves represented the ideal of mastery over material, the ability to take what the earth provides and transform it into exactly what is needed. As we prepare to descend to the lowest branches of Yggdrasil, to the realms of ice and fire that represent the most extreme forces of existence, we carry with us an appreciation for Svartalfheim's contribution to the cosmic order. Without the dwarves' craftsmanship, the gods would lack their greatest weapons, heroes would have no legendary arms, the stories themselves would be diminished. The underground realm, for all its darkness, is essential, a place where human hands or dwarf hands impose form and purpose on formless matter, creating order from chaos through the simple but profound act of making something well. At the lowest reaches of Yggdrasil, where the roots delve deepest into primordial darkness, lies Niflheim, the realm of ice, mist, and freezing cold. This is one of the two primordial realms that existed before creation itself, before the gods, before even Ymir the first giant. Niflheim represents the cosmic principle of cold, of stillness, of the frozen and the obscured. It is a realm of eternal winter, of darkness unbroken by sun or fire, of mists that conceal and confuse, of ice that preserves and imprisons. Niflheim existed in the beginning. To the north of Ginnungagap, Gap, the yawning void. From within this realm flowed the Ilivigar, the 11 rivers of ice that poured into the emptiness, their waters freezing as they flowed, creating layers of ice and frost that built up over uncounted ages. It was this ice, meeting the heat from Muspelheim to the south, that began the process of creation, the melting and dripping that formed Ymir and Audhumla, the first living beings, and set in motion all that would follow. At the heart of Niflheim lies Virgelmr, the roaring cauldron, a spring from which many rivers flow. This is not a warm spring, but a source of ice-cold waters that feed the rivers of Niflheim and spread throughout the cosmos. Virgelmr is one of the 3 great wells connected to Yggdrasil's roots, and it is here that the dragon Nidhogg dwells, gnawing eternally at the root of the world tree, working to bring about its eventual destruction. Nidhogg is described as a terrible serpent or dragon, his name meaning malice striker or one who strikes with hatred. He chews constantly at Yggdrasil's root, trying to sever it, to bring down the great tree and with it all the realms it supports. Surrounding him at Virgelmr are countless serpents, all gnawing at the root alongside their master, all contributing to the slow work of destruction. These serpents represent decay, entropy, the forces that work against creation and order, breaking down what has been built, returning complexity to simplicity, structure to chaos. But Nidhogg has another role as well. He is said to feed on the corpses of the dead who come to Niflheim, particularly those who were oath-breakers, murderers, and adulterers in life, the most despised criminals in Norse society. He chews their bodies, and this is described as part of their punishment. Yet in doing so, Nidhogg also serves as a kind of cosmic recycler, breaking down what has died, returning it to its component parts, completing the cycle that allows for new creation. The landscape of Niflheim is harsh beyond mortal comprehension. It is a realm of glaciers and ice fields stretching endlessly in all directions, of mountains carved from frozen water, of caverns where stalactites and stalagmites of ice create forests of crystalline spears. The mist that gives the realm part of its name rolls constantly, thick and impenetrable, obscuring vision, muffling sound, creating a sense of isolation and disorientation. Nothing grows here, no plants or trees, no life as it exists in the warmer realms above. Niflheim is stillness and silence, cold and dark, the absence of warmth and light and vitality. Yet there is a terrible beauty to Nibelheim as well. The ice formations catch what little light exists and refract it, creating subtle plays of color in the darkness. The frost that coats every surface forms patterns of exquisite complexity and delicacy. The mists sometimes part to reveal vistas of frozen magnificence, ice cliffs rising impossibly high, frozen waterfalls suspended in eternal stillness, fields of ice so smooth they reflect like mirrors. It is beauty without warmth, perfection without life, the aesthetic of pure form divorced from function. Time seems to move differently in Nibelheim, if it moves at all. The cold preserves everything, preventing decay in the ordinary sense. Things that fall into Nibelheim's depths remain frozen, unchanged, neither living nor decomposing, simply existing in a state of suspended animation. This makes Nibelheim a realm of memory and preservation, where the past is held intact, where nothing is truly lost but also nothing moves forward. It is stagnation elevated to a cosmic principle. Some sources place Helheim, the realm of the dead ruled by the goddess Hel, within or adjacent to Nibelheim. The connection makes sense. Both are realms of cold and darkness. Both are associated with death and endings. Both exist at the lowest level of Yggdrasil structure. Whether they are the same place or separate but connected realms, there is clearly a relationship between the primordial ice realm and the land of the dead. The rivers that flow from Virgelmer carry the cold of Nibelheim outward, spreading its influence to other realms. These rivers, the Livigar, are named in the sources: Svol, Gunthra, Fjorm, Fimmelthal, and others, each a stream of ice-cold water flowing through the cosmos. Where they flow, they bring winter's touch. They freeze and preserve. They remind the warmer realms that cold is always waiting, always ready to reclaim what warmth has taken. In the time before creation, before Ymir and the beginning of the world, Nibelheim simply was. It existed in darkness and cold, unchanging, eternal, complete in itself. There were no stories then because there was no change, no events, no time in the sense that we understand it. Nibelheim in its pure form is the antithesis of story, of history, of narrative. It is eternal stasis, the unchanging foundation upon which change can be built. The frost giants, the Hermerser, have some connection to Nibelheim, though they dwell primarily in Jotunheim. They embody Nibelheim's essence, cold, ancient, resistant to change, threatening to overwhelm the warmth and life of the ordered world with eternal winter. When they march at Ragnarok, they bring with them something of Nibelheim's nature, the threat of being frozen, stilled, preserved in ice until all warmth and life are extinguished. For mortals, Nibelheim represents the ultimate cold, the freezing that cannot be survived, the winter that never ends. The Norse, living in northern lands where winter was harsh and deadly, understood cold as an existential threat. To freeze to death was a real danger, and Nibelheim embodies that danger elevated to cosmic scale. It is the cold that killed the gods themselves at the beginning, before they learned to create fire and warmth, before they established the ordered world where life could flourish. Yet Nibelheim also represents necessity. Without cold, there would be no contrast with warmth, no appreciation for heat and light. Without the threat of freezing, the comfort of a warm hall would mean nothing. Without Nibelheim, Muspelheim would have had nothing to react against, no opposite to create the tension that generated the first life. The primordial ice realm is essential to existence, even though it is hostile to life in its pure form. The mists of Nibelheim obscure and confuse, but they also conceal and protect. Things hidden in the mist cannot be found by enemies, cannot be harmed by those who mean ill. The fog that rises from Nibelheim's depths creates boundaries and veils, separating realms, hiding what should not yet be revealed. In Norse culture, where knowing too much too soon could be dangerous, where some mysteries were meant to remain mysteries, Nibelheim's mists serve important function. They mark the limits of knowledge, the boundaries beyond which even the gods should not peer. There is something pure about Nibelheim, an austere perfection in its simplicity. It is uncorrupted by life, unchanged by time, unaffected by story or event. It simply is, and in that being it provides a foundation, a baseline, a point of reference against which all other realms can be measured. The complexity and warmth and life of Midgard are meaningful precisely because they are not Nibelheim, because they represent the triumph of creation over primordial stasis. The Norse concept of the Fimbul winter, the terrible winter that will precede Ragnarok, 3 years of cold with no summer in between, draws on Nibelheim's nature. This is Nibelheim asserting itself, spreading its cold beyond its usual boundaries, reclaiming the world for ice and darkness. When the Fimbul winter comes, it will be as if creation is being undone, as if the world is reverting to primordial state before warmth and life, returning to the frozen void that existed before the gods shaped it into the ordered cosmos. At Ragnarok itself, when the world burns and then sinks beneath the waves, Nibelheim will presumably endure. Ice can melt, but the principle of cold, of stillness, of preservation, these are eternal. When the fires die down and the floods recede, when the new world rises green and beautiful from the sea, Nibelheim will still exist at the lowest level, still sending out its cold rivers, still representing the primordial ice that balances the primordial fire, still serving as a foundation upon which existence rests. Nidhogg, too, will survive Ragnarok. The dragon is mentioned as flying over the battlefield, bearing corpses on his wings, suggesting that even in the new age there will be death, there will be endings, there will be the need for something to process and recycle what has lived and died. The eternal cycle requires both creation and destruction, and Nidhogg serves the necessary function of destruction, breaking down so that new creation becomes possible. Nibelheim teaches us about endings and beginnings, about the cold that precedes warmth, about the darkness that makes light meaningful. It reminds us that stasis and preservation have their place, that not everything should be in constant flux, that sometimes the freezing of time allows for reflection and memory. It shows us that what seems hostile and barren can also be necessary and even, in its own way, beautiful. The realm of ice and mist is the foundation of the world tree, the place where the roots go deepest, where the oldest and most fundamental forces dwell. It is the cosmic basement, the underworld in the most literal sense, the place beneath all other places. Yet it is not evil or malicious. It simply is, existing according to its nature, serving its purpose in the great pattern of the 9 realms. As we prepare to turn from the realm of ice to the realm of fire, from Nibelheim to Muspelheim, we carry an understanding that both extremes are necessary, that the cosmos requires both cold and heat, both stasis and change, both preservation and destruction. Nibelheim, for all its harshness, is as essential to existence as any of the brighter, warmer realms above. It is the still point, the frozen moment, the cold eternity against which the warm brevity of life becomes precious and meaningful. At the opposite extreme from Nibelheim, in the southernmost reaches of the lowest level of Yggdrasil, burns Muspelheim, the realm of fire, heat, and light. This is the second of the 2 primordial realms, existing before creation, before the gods, before time itself had meaning. Where Nibelheim represents cold, stillness, and preservation, Muspelheim embodies heat, motion, and transformation. It is a realm of eternal flame, of molten rock and rivers of fire, of light so bright it sears the eyes, of heat so intense it can melt stone and metal. Muspelheim existed from the beginning, to the south of Ginnungagap, the yawning void. While ice poured forth from Nibelheim, sparks and embers flew from Muspelheim, carried on waves of heat that pushed back against the cold. It was a meeting of these 2 extremes, ice and fire, cold and heat, north and south, that created the conditions for life to emerge. Where the frost from Nibelheim met the heat from Muspelheim, ice melted into water, and from those first drops came Ymir and Audhumla, the beginning of all that would follow. The landscape of Muspelheim is hostile to all but those born of fire. Rivers of lava flow through channels of black stone. Volcanoes erupt constantly, spewing molten rock and ash into a sky that glows red and orange in the reflected flames below. The ground itself radiates heat, and in places it is thin enough that the fires beneath can be seen glowing through cracks and fissures. The air shimmers with heat waves, distorting vision, making it difficult to judge distances or see clearly. Nothing that lives in the cooler realms could survive here. The heat would destroy flesh and bone, would melt metal and stone, would reduce everything to ash and cinder. Yet Muspelheim is not empty. It is inhabited by the fire giants, the sons of Muspel, beings born of flame who thrive in this inferno. These giants are creatures of pure elemental power, their bodies composed of or infused with fire itself. They do not fear the heat or the flames. These are their natural environment, as comfortable to them as a warm hearth is to mortals, or more so. The fire giants represent destruction through burning, the transformative power of flame that breaks down complex structures into simpler elements, that purifies through annihilation. At the entrance to Muspelheim, guarding the border between the realm of fire and the void beyond, stands Surtur. He is described as a giant, even among giants, wielding a flaming sword so bright it outshines the sun. Surtur stood at his post since before the creation of the world, watching, waiting, knowing that he has a role to play at the end of all things. He is patient in the way that fire is patient, always ready to consume, always prepared to spread, simply waiting for the opportunity, for the fuel, for the moment when the barriers that contain it fail. Surtur's name means the Black One or the Swarthy One, which seems paradoxical for being associated with fire and light, but likely refers to the blackened, charred state of things after fire is past, or perhaps to the black smoke that accompanies flames, or the darkness that follows when the fire finally burns out and leaves only ash and void. Surtur represents fire's ultimate conclusion, not warmth and light, but destruction and the absence that follows destruction. The fire giants of Muspelheim have no love for the gods or for the ordered world the gods created. From their perspective, the gods took the raw material of existence, the ice of Nibelheim and the fire of Muspelheim, and shaped it into something constrained and controlled, something that denied the essential nature of both elements. The gods built walls, established laws, created boundaries and limitations. This was anathema to fire's nature, which is to spread, to consume, to transform without restriction or rule. Yet the fire giants remained in Muspelheim, contained within their realm, while the gods built and ruled in the levels above. This was not because they lacked the power to leave, but perhaps because the timing was not yet right, or because Surtur understood that their moment would come, that patience would be rewarded at the appointed time. Fire can wait. Fire can smolder for ages before bursting into full flame. The fire giant's restraint is not weakness, but the confidence of those who know that eventually, inevitably, fire consumes all. The relationship between Muspelheim and creation is fundamental. The sparks that flew from Muspelheim into the void became the stars that light the night sky. The brothers Odin, Vili, and Ve captured these sparks and flung them into the dome of heaven, creating the constellations that guide travelers and mark the passage of seasons. They took the brightest flames and set them on paths across the sky. These became the sun and moon, forever chased by wolves, forever racing to avoid being devoured. In this way, Muspelheim's essence is woven into the fabric of the cosmos. Every star, every sunrise, every warm summer day carries something of primordial fire realm. The warmth that makes life possible, the light that allows growth, the heat that keeps the ice of Nibelheim from overwhelming everything. All of these depend on fire, on the power that originated in Muspelheim before the world was made. Yet fire is inherently unstable, inherently aggressive. It seeks to spread, to consume more fuel, to grow larger and hotter. This makes it dangerous, a force that must be contained and controlled or it will destroy everything. The gods understood this when they shaped the cosmos. They used fire's power but contained it, channeling it into useful forms. preventing it from spreading without limit. The sun and stars burn with Muspelheim's fire, but they are set on fixed paths, their power directed and bounded. This containment cannot last forever. The prophecy of Ragnarok promises that certain as fire giants will eventually break free from Muspelheim, will march forth to join the final battle, and will ultimately spread flame across all the 9 realms. The careful order the gods established will be undone, and fire will return to its primordial state, uncontained, unrestricted, consuming everything in its path. The destruction Muspelheim represents is not malicious. Fire has no morality, no intention beyond its nature. It simply burns, transforms, destroys because that is what fire does. The fire giants do not hate the gods in a personal sense. They simply oppose everything the gods created because it contradicts fire's essential nature. Where the gods built, fire seeks to burn. Where the gods establish permanence, fire brings change. Where the gods created complexity, fire reduces to simplicity. Yet fire is also creative. It transforms raw materials into new forms. The forge fire that allows the dwarves to craft their wonders originates ultimately from Muspelheim's heat. The cooking fire that makes food digestible and safe for humans carries Muspelheim's power in contained form. The hearth fire that warms a hall and provides light through long winter nights is a small piece of the primordial fire realm. Tamed and useful, fire destroys, yes, but it also enables, facilitates, makes possible. This duality is essential to understanding Muspelheim's role in the cosmos. It is not simply a realm of destruction, but a realm of transformation and potential. The heat that can melt and destroy can also forge and create. The flames that can burn down forests also clear land for new growth. The same fire that will unmake the world at Ragnarok also made the world possible in the first place, melting Nibelheim's ice to create the conditions for life. The light of Muspelheim is worth considering. In the beginning, before the sun and stars, Muspelheim was the only source of light in existence. Its flames pushed back against the absolute darkness of the void, creating the first illumination, the first ability to see and perceive. Even now, all light in the cosmos ultimately traces back to Muspelheim. The sun, the stars, the lightning, every candle and torch, all carry something of that original fire. This makes Muspelheim, paradoxically, a realm of revelation as well as destruction. Fire illuminates, makes visible what was hidden in darkness. The flames that consume also expose, reveal structure and truth that can be seen only when surfaces are burned away and essence is exposed. Muspelheim's light is harsh and unforgiving, showing everything in stark clarity, without shadow or concealment. The heat of Muspelheim represents energy in its purest form, the power to move, to change, to act. Where Nibelheim is stasis and stillness, Muspelheim is motion and dynamism. Fire never rests, never pauses, never stops consuming and transforming. This restless energy is necessary to existence, providing the driving force that prevents a cosmos from freezing into eternal stillness, that keeps things moving and changing and alive. At Ragnarok, Muspelheim's true purpose will be revealed. When the bonds that hold the cosmos together break, when Fenrir slips his chains and Loki breaks free, when the giants march from Jotunheim and the dead sail from Hel, Surtur will lead the sons of Muspel forth from their realm of fire. They will cross the rainbow bridge Bifrost, and their passage will shatter it, severing the connection between Asgard and Midgard. They will join the battle on the plain of Vigrid, and Surtur himself will face Freyr. Freyr, the god of peace and fertility, sacrificed his magical sword for love of the giantess Geir. Now he will face Surtur with only a stag's antler for a weapon, and though he fights bravely, he will fall to Surtur's flaming blade. This matchup is deeply symbolic. Fertility and growth facing annihilation and fire, the god who represents life's flourishing cut down by the giant who represents its ending. It is not that Freyr is weak or cowardly, but that fire, in its full unleashed power, cannot be defeated by anything except time and the exhaustion of fuel. After the gods have fallen, after the battles are done, Surtur will fulfill his ultimate purpose. He will spread fire across all the 9 realms. Asgard will burn, its golden halls consumed by flames. Midgard will burn, the forests and fields and human settlements all reduced to ash. Even Yggdrasil itself will burn, the world tree of flame from root to crown, though its roots will continue to writhe, suggesting that not even Surtur can completely destroy it. The world will sink into the sea, extinguished and flooded, but this submersion comes only after the burning. Muspelheim's fire does its work first, reducing the complexity of the cosmos to its simplest elements, burning away everything that the gods built over uncounted ages. This is the fire's victory, not the establishment of Muspelheim's rule, but the return to primordial simplicity, the undoing of creation, the restoration of the original state before the gods imposed their order. Yet even in this destruction, there is a seed of renewal. Fire clears the old growth, making way for new life. The ash left behind enriches the soil. The heat breaks down rigid structures, releasing potential for new forms. When the earth rises again from the sea, green and fertile, it will be land that has been purified by fire, cleansed of the old, ready for the new. This is Muspelheim's gift to existence. Not just destruction, but transformation. Not just ending, but transition. Fire is the force that allows change, that prevents stagnation, that ensures the cosmos does not calcify into unchanging permanence. It is harsh and terrible in its power, but it is also necessary and, in its own fierce way, life-giving. Muspelheim teaches us about energy and transformation, about the power that enables but also destroys, about light that illuminates but also burns. It reminds us that stability and permanence are not the highest goods, that change and transformation are essential to existence, that sometimes the old must be cleared away before the new can emerge. It shows us that fire, for all its danger, is also the source of warmth, light, and the energy that makes life possible. The realm of fire stands as the opposite pole to the realm of ice, and between these two extremes, all of existence plays out. Without Muspelheim, the cosmos would freeze into Niflheim's eternal stillness. Without Niflheim, Muspelheim's fire would consume everything instantly, leaving no structure, no form, no possibility for complexity. It is the tension between these two primordial realms that creates a space where life can exist, where the 9 realms can flourish, where gods and giants and mortals can live out their stories. As we prepare to turn to the final realm, to Helheim, the land of the dead, we carry an understanding that fire is both creator and destroyer, that Muspelheim's role in the cosmic order is as essential as any other realms, and that the flames that will one day consume the world are the same flames that made the world possible in the first place. Fire is not evil. It is simply fire, eternal and elemental, forever burning, forever transforming, forever revealing the essential truth that nothing lasts forever, that all things change, that the only constant is transformation itself. In the darkest depths of Yggdrasil's roots, in the cold and misty regions that border or exist within Niflheim, lies Helheim, the realm of the dead, the final destination for most of humanity and many others who leave the world of the living. This is the domain of Hel, daughter of Loki and the giantess Angerboa, sister to Fenrir the wolf and Jormungandr the world serpent. Helheim is a realm of shadows and silence, of memory and loss, where those who do not die gloriously in battle come to dwell in the halls of the dead. Hel herself was cast down into this realm by Odin when the gods learned of Loki's monstrous children and saw in them the seeds of Ragnarok, where her brothers were bound or cast away to prevent them from causing immediate harm. Hel was given sovereignty over the dead, dominion over 9 worlds within the frozen realm of Niflheim. In this way, Odin turned what could have been mere punishment into purpose, giving Hel responsibility for one of the most essential functions of the cosmos, receiving and caring for the dead. The goddess appears as half living and half dead, one side of her body vital and beautiful, the other side dark and decayed. This duality represents her nature as a guardian of the threshold between life and death, neither fully one nor the other, existing in the liminal space where the living end and the dead continue in altered form. She is stern but not cruel, inflexible but not unjust, accepting what must be accepted and enforcing the rules that govern death with absolute consistency. The journey to Helheim is long and difficult, even for the spirits of the dead. The soul must travel north and downward, through dark valleys and across cold rivers. One of these rivers is the Joel, which forms a boundary around Helheim, flowing near the gates of Hell's realm. This river must be crossed, and there is a bridge called Jalabru, covered with shining gold, though to what purpose such splendor exists in this cold realm is not entirely clear. Perhaps it is a reminder that death comes to all, even those who possess wealth and beauty, and that these things accompany the dead into the next realm. At the crossing of the Joel sits a maiden named Mgur, a guardian who challenges those who would enter Helheim. She asks their name and lineage, seeks to know how they died, and whether they have the right to pass. For those souls who belong in Hell's realm, she allows passage. For others, the spirits of warriors claimed by the Valkyries, or those few who manage to journey here while still living, she may question more deeply or direct them elsewhere. Beyond the bridge lies the gate of Helheim itself, guarded by the great hound Garmr. This monstrous dog is chained in the cave of Nipaheller, but his howling can be heard throughout the realm of the dead. He challenges all who approach, and his bark is said to be one of the most terrible sounds in all existence. Yet Garmr serves a necessary function. He keeps the living from entering where they should not go, and he prevents the dead from leaving before their time. At Ragnarok, his bonds will break, and he will join the final battle, fighting Tyr in combat that will claim both their lives. The landscape of Helheim is cold and dim, illuminated neither by sun nor by fire, but by a pale, sourceless light that allows sight, but provides no warmth. There are no seasons here, no day or night in the ordinary sense, just eternal twilight of a place removed from the cycles that govern the living world. The ground is covered with a thin layer of frost, and mist rises from the cold earth, giving everything a hazy, dreamlike quality. Hell's Hall is called Ljner, which means damp or sprayed with snowstorms. It stands at the center of her realm, and those who come to Helheim gather there or in the surrounding settlements. The hall itself is described as being grim, with gates that are high and formidable. Inside, the furnishings bear names that reflect the sorrow and hardship that often accompany death. Her plate is called Hunger, her knife Famine, her threshold Stumbling Block, her bed Sickbed, and her bed curtains Glimmering Misfortune. These grim names should not be understood as torments that hell inflicts, but rather as acknowledgments of the realities that bring people to her realm. Many who die do so from hunger, illness, or age. They come to her having suffered, and her hall reflects that suffering. Yet in accepting them, in providing a place for them, hell offers what comfort is possible for the dead. They are not punished for failing to die in battle. They simply exist in a state that reflects the nature of their deaths. Not all areas of Helheim are equally bleak. There are halls where the honored dead who did not fall in battle may dwell in some comfort, where families are reunited, where the dead continue a kind of shadowy existence that mirrors their living days, but without the urgency and intensity of mortal life. These are not places of great joy, but neither are they places of torment. They are simply where the dead are, existing in memory and shadow, waiting for the end of the current cosmic cycle. But there is also Nastrand, the corpse shore, a place within Helheim reserved for the worst of the dead. This is where oath breakers, murderers, and adulterers are sent, those who violated the most sacred bonds of Norse society. Nastrand is described as a hall woven from serpents, with their heads facing inward, dripping venom. Here, the dragon Nidhogg feeds on corpses of the dishonored dead, chewing them as he chews the roots of Yggdrasil. This is the closest thing to punishment in the Norse afterlife, reserved not for those who simply died poorly, but for those who lived dishonorably. The concept of Helheim challenges common misconceptions about the Norse afterlife. It is not primarily a place of punishment or suffering, but simply where most people go when they die. The Norse did not believe that everyone could or should die in battle. Farmers, craftsmen, women, children, the elderly, all these would come to Hell's realm, and this was natural and right. Only a select few would go to Valhalla or Sesrumner, and while this was an honor, it did not mean that everyone else was disgraced or damned. Life in Helheim is diminished compared to mortal existence. The dead retain their memories and identities, but their passions are muted, their concerns distant. They exist in a kind of half-state, neither fully gone nor fully present, like echoes or shadows of their living selves. This is not torment, but simply the nature of death in the Norse understanding. What made life vivid and meaningful was its intensity, its brevity, its urgency, and these qualities cannot survive the transition to death. When Herm rode to Helheim seeking Baldur's return, he found the beautiful god seated in the place of honor in Hell's Hall. Even in death, even in the realm of shadows, Baldur's essential nature remained and Hell respected it. This shows that Helheim does not strip the dead of all dignity or significance, that what they were in life continues to matter, even if in attenuated form. Hell's response to Herm's plea reveals her character. She did not refuse outright to release Baldur, nor did she demand an impossible price. She set a condition that was difficult but not unfair. If all things in the world would weep for Baldur, then clearly he was as beloved as claimed, and such universal love might justify his return. When one refused to weep, Hel kept her word. Baldur remained in her realm, and she made no apology for enforcing the rules that govern death. This inflexibility is essential to Hel's nature and role. Death must have rules, boundaries, consistency. If the dead could simply be brought back at will, death would lose its meaning, and with it, much of what makes life significant. Hell enforces the natural order, maintains a boundary between life and death, ensures that what is meant to be cannot be undone simply because the living wish it otherwise. This is not cruelty but necessity, the hard truth that even gods must accept. The dead in Helheim can communicate with the living under certain circumstances. Seeresses and those skilled in seer magic can call up spirits from Hell's realm to answer questions, to provide prophecies, to share knowledge they gained before death or learn in the realm of shadows. Odin himself practiced this art, calling up dead Volvas to question them about the future, about Ragnarok, about his own fate. The dead, removed from the immediacy of life, sometimes see more clearly, understand patterns that the living are too immersed in events to perceive. There are also mentions of the dead riding out from Helheim on certain occasions, particularly at times when the boundaries between worlds grow thin. These spectral processions are omens, signs that the normal order is disturbed, that events of great significance are unfolding. The dead are not entirely cut off from the living world, but maintain a connection, weak but real, that can be activated under special circumstances. At Ragnarok, Helheim will disgorge its inhabitants. The ship Naglfar, built from the fingernails and toenails of the dead, will sail from Hel's realm carrying the legions of the dishonored dead. Loki will stand among them, finally and fully opposed to the gods he once lived among. Hel herself may join them, though the sources are unclear about her personal role in the final battle. What is certain is that death itself will participate in the ending, that the accumulated dead of ages will join the assault on the ordered world, that even the quiet realm of shadows will contribute to the cosmic catastrophe. This participation suggests that death, too, has been constrained, kept within bounds, forced to serve the order the gods established. At Ragnarok, these constraints break, and death spreads without limit or rule. The careful boundary between living and dead dissolves, and the two realms mix in ways they should not, contributing to the chaos that consumes everything. Yet death, like fire and ice, is not ultimately destroyed by Ragnarok. When the new world rises from the sea, when Baldur returns from Hell's realm to join the surviving gods, death continues to exist. It must. For mortal beings will live in the new world, and mortals must die. But perhaps death in the renewed cosmos will be different. Gentler, less fearful, more accepted as a natural transition it is rather than the loss and sorrow it so often represents. Helheim teaches us about endings and acceptance, about the reality that all living things must eventually die, about the necessity of respecting the boundaries between different states of existence. It shows us that death need not be torture or punishment, but can be simply the next stage, different from life but not inherently terrible, a realm of rest for those who are weary, a place of memory for those whose time of action has passed. The realm of the dead is the final destination for most of humanity, the place where the stories that define individual lives come to their conclusion. It is not glorious like Valhalla or beautiful like Alfheim, but it is honest. It acknowledges that most deaths are not heroic, that most people die in beds or from illness, that the end comes not with battle glory but with quiet fading. And Helheim receives these dead without judgment, provides them a place, allows them to continue in diminished form until the cosmos itself ends and begins anew. Hell, as the ruler of this realm, embodies compassion within strictness. She does not torment her charges, but neither does she coddle them. She maintains the rules of death because someone must, because the boundary between living and dead is essential to the functioning of existence. Her hall may be grim, her names may speak of hardship, but she provides what the dead need, a place to be, an acknowledgement of their existence, a continuation beyond the ending of mortal life. As we complete our journey to the 9 realms, having traveled from the bright heights of Asgard to the cold depths of Helheim, we understand that death is not the opposite of life, but its conclusion, its necessary ending that makes the story complete. Without Helheim, the dead would have nowhere to go, would remain trapped between existence and non-existence, unable to rest, unable to let go. Hell's realm, for all its shadows and chill, serves the vital function of receiving what life releases, of providing the final home for those whose time in the upper realms has ended. The 9 realms are complete, from Asgard's gold to Helheim's shadows, from Muspelheim's fire to Nibelheim's ice, from the beauty of Alfheim to craft of Svartalfheim, from the order of the gods to the chaos of the giants, with Midgard at the center where mortals live their brief, intense lives. All are connected through Yggdrasil, all are part of the great pattern, all are necessary to the functioning of the cosmos. And understanding each realm helps us understand the whole, the Norse vision of existence as a complex interplay of opposing forces, all held in tension, all essential, all moving toward the inevitable end that is also, somehow, a new beginning.